They called us the soft species. Across 7 star systems, in council chambers where beings with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws made decisions about galactic warfare, humans were dismissed as fragile curiosities. Our skin could be pierced by their children's toys. Our bones broke under gravity that barely registered on their sensors. We had no venom, no natural weapons, no thick hides to turn away plasma fire. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding for 3,000 years, consuming worlds with the methodical precision of a cosmic harvester. Their latest target was a small agricultural planet in the Outer Rim, barely worth mentioning in their war reports. The only notable thing about it was the human research station in orbit, studying crop genetics for the Galactic Agricultural Council. 47 humans. Scientists, technicians, a few security guards with standard-issue energy weapons. The Zephyrians sent a single cruiser. It should have been a footnote in history. A tragic but unremarkable incident where humanity's weakness was once again exposed to the galaxy's harsh realities. The Galactic Council would file their standard protest, offer condolences, and move on to more pressing matters. But something went wrong with their plan. The cruiser never reported back. When the Zephyrian High Command sent their entire battle fleet to investigate 200 warships carrying weapons that could crack moons, they found something that would haunt their nightmares and echo through every military academy in the galaxy for generations to come. They found silence. Complete, absolute, terrifying silence. And, floating in the void where their cruiser should have been, they found a message beacon. A simple transmission in perfect Zephyrian, broadcast on all frequencies: "You have made a mistake." What happened next would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the soft, weak, fragile humans who seemed so helpless among the stars. Dr. Sarah Chen was examining soil samples from Kepler 442b when the proximity alarms started screaming. The research station Mendel's Garden had been orbiting the agricultural world for 8 months, and this was the first time she'd heard anything louder than the gentle hum of the hydroponics bay. She looked up from her microscope, brushing a strand of black hair from her eyes. The red warning lights painted the laboratory in crimson shadows, making the carefully arranged plant specimens look like twisted sculptures. "All personnel to emergency stations." The voice belonged to Commander Marcus Webb, the station's security chief. His tone was calm, professional, but Sarah caught the edge underneath. She'd known Marcus for 3 years, had seen him handle everything from equipment failures to cosmic radiation storms. He didn't rattle easily. Sarah sealed her samples and headed for the command center. The corridors of the station buzzed with activity as the 47 crew members moved to their designated positions. Most were scientists like herself, botanists, soil specialists, atmospheric engineers working to help Kepler 442b become one of the galaxy's premier food production worlds. They weren't soldiers. The command center was a modest affair, designed for monitoring agricultural data rather than military operations. Commander Webb stood before the main display, his weathered face illuminated by tactical readouts. Beside him, Dr. James Okafor, the station director, nervously adjusted his glasses. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked, joining the small crowd of senior staff. Webb didn't turn around. "Zephyrian cruiser. Void render class. Just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Zephyrian Empire. They'd been expanding aggressively for millennia, consuming worlds and enslaving populations with ruthless efficiency. Their military technology was considered among the most advanced in known space. "Have they made contact?" Dr. Okafor asked. "No." Webb's jaw tightened. "But they're not here for a friendly chat. Void Render class ships are planet killers. They're designed for one thing: total orbital bombardment." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "How long until they reach us?" "At their current speed?" 6 hours. The command center fell silent except for the quiet beeping of monitors. Sarah looked around at her colleagues, people who had dedicated their lives to growing things, to nurturing life from barren soil. The irony was bitter. They were about to be destroyed by a species that viewed them as nothing more than an inconvenience. We need to evacuate, Dr. Okafor said. Get everyone to the escape pods. Webb shook his head. Pods won't help. That cruiser can track and destroy them before they reach the planet. And even if some made it down, the Zephyrians will glass the surface anyway. Then, we surrender, Dr. Okafor's voice cracked. Maybe they don't take prisoners. Webb's voice was flat, final. Not from species they consider inferior. To them, we're vermin. Sarah stared at the tactical display showing the approaching Zephyrian ship. It looked like a massive spearhead, bristling with weapon arrays. According to the readout, it was nearly 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to sterilize a continent. What about the emergency beacon? Asked Dr. Martinez, the station's communications officer. We could call for help. Webb let out a bitter laugh. Help from who? The nearest Galactic Council fleet is 3 star systems away. Even if they responded immediately, they wouldn't arrive for weeks. Earth, someone suggested hopefully. Earth's military is 6 systems in the opposite direction. Same problem. Sarah felt a strange calm settling over her. Perhaps this was how it felt to accept death, not the panic terror she'd expected, but a quiet resignation. She thought about her parents back on Earth, about the letter she'd been meaning to write. About the breakthrough she'd made last week in developing drought-resistant wheat variants. All of it would die with them. Sir, Dr. Martinez called out, his voice tight with confusion. I'm picking up something strange. Webb turned. What kind of strange? Multiple hyperspace signatures. Small craft, approaching fast from the outer system. Sarah watched as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. 12 objects, moving at incredible speed toward their position. The computer struggled to classify them. They were too small to be warships, too fast to be cargo vessels. Can you identify them? Webb asked. Martinez shook his head. Never seen anything like them. They're not broadcasting any identification signals. The mysterious craft were closing distance rapidly, their trajectory putting them on an intercept course with the Zephyrian cruiser. As Sarah watched, the tactical computer finally managed a partial classification. Human design, Martinez breathed. They're definitely human ships, but they're not in any database I can access. Webb frowned. That's impossible. There are no human military vessels in this sector. The approaching ships were sleek, angular things that looked more like projectiles than spacecraft. Sarah noticed they weren't following standard approach vectors. Instead, they moved in complex patterns that seemed almost organic, like a school of fish swimming through space. Incoming transmission, Martinez announced. It's from the lead human ship. Put it through. The main display flickered, and, suddenly, they were looking at a man Sarah didn't recognize. He appeared to be in his 40s, with graying hair and cold blue eyes. His uniform bore no insignia she could identify. Research Station Mendel's Garden, this is Captain Harrison Kane of the Silent Running. We're here to assist. Dr. Okafor stepped forward. Captain, we appreciate your response, but I'm afraid there's not much you can do. We're facing a Zephyrian cruiser with 47 civilians aboard. Perhaps you could help with evacuation? Kane's expression didn't change. That won't be necessary, Doctor. We'll handle the Zephyrian vessel. Sarah felt a surge of disbelief. 12 small ships against a massive enemy cruiser? It was suicide. Captain, Webb interjected, with all due respect, that's a Void Render-class ship. Your vessels appear to be. He paused, studying the tactical display, interceptors of some kind? You'd be outgunned 1,000 to 1. Kane smiled, and something in that expression made Sarah shiver. Commander, I appreciate your concern, but you might want to trust us on this one. Who are you people? Dr. Okafor demanded. What military unit do you represent? We represent humanity's interests, Doctor. That's all you need to know. Kane's image flickered. I suggest you secure all personnel and prepare for some unusual readings on your sensors. This might get a bit loud. The transmission cut out, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah watched as the 12 human ships changed formation, spreading out in a complex pattern around the approaching Zephyrian cruiser. The enemy vessel had detected them now. She could see its weapon systems powering up, massive energy signatures blooming across its hull. "This is insane," Dr. Okafor whispered. "Those ships are going to be vaporized." But Webb was studying the tactical display with a puzzled expression. "Wait. Something's not right here." "What do you mean?" "Look at the energy readings from those human ships. They're not showing up as standard fusion drives or plasma engines." Sarah leaned closer to the display. Webb was right, the energy signatures were unlike anything she'd seen before. They seemed to flicker and shift, as if the ships were phasing in and out of normal space. "Gravitational anomalies," Martinez reported, his voice rising with alarm. "I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions around the human vessels." The Zephyrian cruiser fired first. Massive plasma beams lanced out, weapons designed to crack planetary crusts. Sarah watched in horror as the beams streaked toward the tiny human ships. The beams passed through empty space. The human ships were no longer where they had been a moment before. "Did they jump to hyperspace?" Dr. Okafor asked. "No, sir," Martinez replied, his hands flying over his instruments. "They're still here, but the sensors can't get a solid lock on them. It's like they're existing in multiple positions simultaneously." On the display, the human ships reappeared, but not where they'd been before. They were closer now, much closer, and their formation had become something that hurt to look at, angles that seemed to fold back on themselves, movements that violated basic physics. The Zephyrian cruiser fired again, this time with everything it had. The space around the research station lit up like a miniature star as dozens of weapon systems discharged simultaneously. Again, the human ships weren't there when the weapons reached their targets. "Impossible," Webb breathed. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's air conditioning. She was watching something that shouldn't exist, ships that moved like thoughts, weapons that bent space itself, a display of technology that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look like children with sticks. On the display, one of the human ships was moving toward the Zephyrian cruiser. Not flying, moving in a way that seemed to ignore distance altogether. One moment it was kilometers away, the next it was alongside the massive enemy vessel. The Zephyrian cruiser's shields flared and died. "How?" Dr. Okafor stammered. "Their shields can withstand planetary bombardment." Sarah watched as the human ship, no bigger than a shuttle compared to the cruiser, somehow reached out and touched the enemy vessel's hull. There was no visible weapon, no energy beam, no missile launch. The 2-kilometer-long Zephyrian cruiser simply stopped. Every light went out. Every engine went silent. Every weapon system went dark. In the space of a heartbeat, one of the galaxy's most fearsome warships had become a drifting hulk. "Life support failure across the entire enemy vessel," Martinez reported in a whisper. "No power readings. No emissions of any kind." Sarah stared at the tactical display, trying to process what she just witnessed. The Zephyrian cruiser hung in space like a massive tomb, completely dead. Around it, the 12 human ships moved in their impossible patterns, untouchable, incomprehensible. Dr. Okafor's hands were shaking. "What have we just seen?" Before anyone could answer, the communication system crackled to life again. Captain Kane's face appeared on the screen, his expression unchanged. "Research Station Mendel's Garden, this is Captain Kane. The threat has been neutralized. You may resume normal operations." "Captain," Webb's voice was hoarse, "what did you do to that ship?" Kane's cold blue eyes seemed to look right through the screen. "We reminded them why it's a mistake to threaten human civilians, Commander." "But how?" "That technology, it's impossible." Kane smiled again, that same chilling expression. "Commander, when the galaxy looks at humanity, they see our soft skin, our fragile bones, our apparent weakness. They make the assumption that we're helpless because we appear defenseless." He leaned forward slightly. "They forget to ask themselves a very important question. Which is, If we're so weak, so helpless, so technologically inferior, how exactly did we survive long enough to reach the stars in the first place? The transmission ended, leaving the research station in absolute silence. Sarah looked around the command center at her colleagues' shocked faces, then, back at the tactical display where 12 impossible ships continued their graceful, physics-defying dance around the corpse of what had been one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. For the first time in her life, she began to understand that there might be things about her own species that she had never imagined. The Zephyrian High Command received the distress signal exactly 18 hours after losing contact with the Void Render. The message was brief, automated, and terrifying in its simplicity: critical failure. All systems down. Assistance required. Admiral Vextar studied the transmission from his flagship, the massive dreadnought Empire's Wrath. Around him, the bridge crew of his most elite warriors worked in tense silence. The Zephyrians had ruled through military might for 3 millennia. They had conquered star systems, enslaved entire species, and faced down every conceivable threat the galaxy could offer. They had never lost a Void Render-class cruiser to 47 human scientists. Status report, Vextar commanded, his forearms manipulating control interfaces with practiced efficiency. The Zephyrian admiral was a mountain of chitin and muscle, his natural armor plating gleaming under the bridge lights. Scars from a dozen campaigns marked his carapace, each one a testament to his survival and ruthlessness. "The fleet is assembled, Admiral," reported his second-in-command, Commander Zektol. 200 vessels. 6 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, 70 destroyers, and the remainder support craft. Vextar nodded grimly. It was overkill for a research station, but the mysterious loss of the Void Render demanded overwhelming force. Whatever had happened in the Kepler 442 system, it would not happen again. Any intelligence on these humans? Standard profile, sir. Soft tissue species, minimal natural defenses, average technology. Their military records show conventional weapons and tactics. Nothing that should pose a threat to our forces. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in irritation. Then, explain how they destroyed a cruiser that could level a continent. Zektol hesitated. Perhaps mechanical failure? Sabotage? The humans might have infiltrated the ship somehow. It was a weak theory, but Vextar had no better explanation. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as one of the newer, less threatening species. Their colonies were small, their military limited, their technology unremarkable. They were barely worth the Empire's attention under normal circumstances. Time to hyperspace jump? 30 minutes, Admiral. Vextar turned back to the tactical display showing his assembled fleet. 200 warships, the pride of the Zephyrian military. Enough firepower to reduce entire worlds to smoking debris. Whatever trick the humans had used, they would not use it twice. The jump to Kepler 442 was flawless. The entire fleet materialized at the system's edge in perfect formation, weapons charged, shields raised. Vextar immediately ordered a full sensor sweep. What they found defied explanation. The Void Render was exactly where it should be, orbiting the agricultural world. But it was completely dark, no power, no life signs, no emissions of any kind. It hung in space like a 2-kilometer-long coffin. The human research station was still there, apparently undamaged and continuing its normal operations. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, his voice tight with confusion. "I'm detecting multiple gravimetric anomalies throughout the system." "Clarify." "Unknown objects, sir. They're difficult to track. The sensors keep losing lock." Vextar studied the tactical display. Faint contacts appeared and disappeared seemingly at random, sometimes close to his fleet, sometimes near the research station, sometimes in empty space between planets. The computer couldn't determine their size, speed, or number with any accuracy. Could they be sensor ghosts? "Negative, sir. These are definitely solid objects. They're just moving in ways that don't match any known propulsion system." Admiral Vextar had commanded fleets in battles across 7 star systems. He had faced every type of enemy technology the galaxy had to offer.
He had never seen anything like this. Open a channel to the human station.
The main display flickered, and, suddenly, they were looking at a middle-aged human in a simple civilian uniform. Dr. James Okafor, according to the data file. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire," the Admiral began, his translated voice booming across the bridge. "You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of destroying our vessel." Dr. Okafor appeared remarkably calm for someone facing a fleet of 200 warships.
"Admiral, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We haven't destroyed anything.
Your cruiser suffered what appeared to be a complete system failure. We've been monitoring it since the incident, but there are no life signs aboard." "You expect me to believe that a Void Render-class ship simply failed?" "I'm a botanist, Admiral. I study plants. I wouldn't know how to destroy a starship even if I wanted to." Vextar's mandibles clicked dangerously. "Then, you will not object to a boarding party examining your station." Dr. Okafor spread his hands.
"Admiral, I can't stop you from trying.
But, I should warn you, there are others in this system who might have different opinions about that."
"Others?"
Before Dr. Okafor could respond, the communication channel crackled with interference. A new voice cut through, cold and professional.
"Admiral Vextar, this is Captain Harrison Kane. I suggest you reconsider your current course of action."
The display split, showing both Dr. Okafor and a stern-faced human in an unidentifiable uniform. Vextar studied the new arrival. There was something about the human's eyes that suggested experience with violence, despite his species' apparent frailty.
"You are responsible for our lost vessel?" Vextar demanded.
"Your vessel entered this system with weapons charged and hostile intent against civilians.
We responded accordingly." "With what? Show me your fleet." Kane smiled, and something in that expression made Vextar's exoskeleton itch with unease. "Admiral, you're looking right at it."
The tactical display erupted in warnings as the gravimetric anomalies suddenly solidified into distinct contacts. 12 ships materialized around the Zephyrian fleet, not approaching from a distance, simply there, as if they had been waiting invisibly all along. Vextar stared at the display in disbelief. The ships were tiny compared to his dreadnoughts, barely larger than fighters. Yet somehow they had appeared in the middle of his formation without triggering a single alarm. "Impossible," Commander Zektol breathed. The human ships moved in patterns that violated every law of physics Vextar understood. They didn't accelerate, they simply changed position, as if distance was merely a suggestion. They flowed around his massive warships like water around stones, untouchable and inexplicable.
"All ships, open fire," Vextar commanded. 200 Zephyrian warships opened fire simultaneously.
The space around Kepler 442 lit up like a newborn star as thousands of weapons discharged plasma cannons, particle beams, kinetic missiles, gravity bombs. Enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds.
Every shot missed.
The human ships danced through the barrage as if it wasn't there.
They moved between energy beams, around missiles, through the paths of projectiles that should have been unavoidable. It was as if they existed partially outside normal spacetime. "Admiral," the weapons officer called out, "targeting systems cannot maintain lock."
The enemy vessels appear to be in multiple positions simultaneously. Vextar watched his fleet's devastating barrage accomplish absolutely nothing while 12 impossible ships continued their graceful, mocking dance through the vacuum. His warriors, beings who had conquered star systems, were being made to look like children throwing rocks at ghosts.
"How are they doing this?"
Zektol whispered. Before Vextar could respond, one of the human ships was suddenly alongside his flagship. Not approaching, simply there, impossibly close to the Empire's Wrath's massive hull.
The Dreadnought's point defense systems should have vaporized anything that came within 1,000 kilometers. They hadn't even detected the approach.
Captain Kane's voice crackled over the communication system.
"Admiral, I'm going to give you a choice.
You can withdraw your fleet from this system and return to Zephyrian space, or you can discover what happened to your cruiser." Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare, genuine fear. Not the adrenaline rush of a challenging battle, but the deep, primitive terror of facing something completely beyond comprehension.
You think 12 ships can threaten a fleet of this magnitude? Admiral, you're missing the point. We're not threatening your fleet.
Kane's voice was perfectly calm.
We're offering you mercy.
The human ship beside the Empire's Wrath did something that would haunt Vextar's nightmares for the rest of his life. Without any visible weapon, without any energy discharge, without any external action whatsoever, it reached out and touched his flagship.
Every system on the bridge went dark.
Emergency lighting flickered on as the massive dreadnought's primary power failed. Gravity fluctuated, life support stuttered, and the artificial atmosphere tasted suddenly stale and metallic.
Engineering report.
Vextar shouted. Complete system failure, Admiral, came the panicked response.
Fusion reactors offline, backup power failing, all weapons dark.
Around the flagship, the same thing was happening to ship after ship throughout the fleet.
One by one, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire went dark.
Not destroyed, not damaged, simply turned off, as if someone had found an impossible switch and decided to use it.
In less than 10 minutes, 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had been reduced to powerless hulks drifting in space.
Captain Kane's voice continued broadcasting on what was apparently the only functioning communication system in the fleet. Admiral, your life support will last approximately 6 hours. I suggest you use that time to consider humanity's position in your future expansion plans. Vextar found himself sitting in the darkness of his own flagship, surrounded by the inoperative instruments of war that had made him master of star systems.
For the first time in his military career, he was completely helpless. "What do you want?" he managed to ask. "I want you to deliver a message, Admiral." "Can you do that?" "What message?"
Kane's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Tell the Zephyrian High Command that they have encountered humanity's military.
Not our defense forces, not our colonial security, not our exploration fleets. Our actual military."
Vextar felt his exoskeleton grow cold. This is your military?
12 ships, Admiral.
We neutralized your entire invasion fleet with 12 ships.
How many more do you have?
There was a long pause before Kane answered, and, when he did, his voice carried a weight that pressed down on the darkened bridge like the gravity of a collapsing star.
"Admiral, that's not the right question. The question you should be asking is, how many do we need?" Around the drifting Zephyrian fleet, 12 impossible ships continued their patient dance in the void.
And, in the silence between stars, a message began broadcasting on all frequencies in perfect Zephyrian. The soft species sends its regards. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on Nexus Prime exactly 72 hours after Admiral Vextar's fleet limped back to Zephyrian space. Representatives from 43 species gathered in the massive amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the universal translators struggled to parse. Councillor Zelneth of the Altarian Republic called for order, her crystalline form chiming like wind bells as she spoke. "We are here to address the unprecedented events in the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire has agreed to provide testimony." The Zephyrian Admiral looked diminished as he approached the central platform. His usually gleaming carapace was dull, and several of his decorative war scars seemed faded. When he spoke, his translated voice carried none of its usual arrogance. "Honored counselors, what I am about to tell you will challenge everything we believe about military capability in this galaxy." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Zephyrian Empire had been the dominant military power for 3 millennia. If something had rattled them so thoroughly, the implications were staggering. "My fleet of 200 vessels encountered 12 human ships in the Kepler system. Those 12 ships neutralized our entire force without sustaining a single casualty." The murmurs turned to shocked gasps. Councillor Nixera of the Velcrin Syndicate, her serpentine form coiled in disbelief, spoke first. "Admiral, are you suggesting that 12 ships defeated 200 of your finest warships?" "Not defeated, Councillor. Disabled. Completely and utterly disabled. Every ship in my fleet lost all power simultaneously. No weapons discharge, no explosion, no debris field. Our vessels were simply turned off.
Counselor Thane of the Regelian colonies leaned forward, his massive bulk causing the floor to vibrate. What technology could accomplish such a thing?
Vexstar's mandibles clicked nervously.
Unknown, Counselor.
Our sensors could barely track the human vessels. They moved through space in ways that our physics cannot explain.
They appeared and disappeared at will. They passed through our weapons fire as if it didn't exist. The human representative, Ambassador Elena Vasquez, sat quietly in her designated section.
She was a small woman, unremarkable by galactic standards, no natural armor, no obvious weapons, no intimidating physical features.
Yet every eye in the amphitheater was fixed on her.
Ambassador Vasquez, Counselor Zelneth chimed, your people have been members of the Galactic Council for 37 years. In that time, you have portrayed humanity as a peaceful, scientifically oriented species.
How do you explain these recent events?
Elena stood slowly, her simple blue diplomatic robes a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial armor worn by most other representatives. When she spoke, her voice was clear and calm. Honored counselors, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about my species. She paused, looking around the amphitheater at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. When humanity first reached the stars, we made a conscious decision about how we would present ourselves to the galactic community. We chose to emphasize our scientific achievements, our cultural contributions, our peaceful intentions. We believed that if we could demonstrate our value as researchers, diplomats, and traders, we would find our place among you without conflict.
Counselor Nixera's serpentine head weaved suspiciously. Are you saying that humanity has been deliberately deceptive about your capabilities? Not deceptive, Counselor. Selective.
There is a difference between lying about our nature and simply not discussing every aspect of it.
Elena activated a holographic display that appeared in the center of the amphitheater.
It showed a timeline of human history, beginning with their emergence from their home world. When the Ulterian Republic first made contact with Earth, my people had been spacefaring for only 200 years. In that relatively brief time, we had established colonies on 17 worlds and begun exploring nearby star systems. She highlighted a section of the timeline. What we didn't mention during those early diplomatic contacts was how humanity had learned to travel between stars so quickly. The hologram shifted, showing star charts with travel routes marked in red. The routes didn't follow the standard hyperspace lanes that most species used. Instead, they cut directly through regions of space that were considered impassable. Most species in the galaxy develop space travel by working around the dangerous phenomena that exist between stars. Gravity wells, quantum storms, temporal distortions, you found ways to avoid these obstacles.
Elena's expression grew serious. Humanity took a different approach. We learned to navigate through them. Admiral Vexstar leaned forward. That's impossible. Those phenomena would tear any ship apart. Any conventional ship, yes. But humanity doesn't build conventional ships, Admiral. Elena gestured, and the hologram changed to show technical schematics that made several counselors gasp in amazement.
The displayed vessel looked nothing like the standardized designs used by galactic civilization. Instead of the smooth, predictable lines of conventional starships, this was something that seemed to exist partially outside normal geometry. Its hull appeared to fold back on itself in ways that hurt to look at directly.
This is a human exploration vessel, Elena explained.
What you're seeing is a ship designed to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. It can phase in and out of normal spacetime, allowing it to bypass physical obstacles that would stop other vessels.
Counselor Thane's massive form shifted nervously. Ambassador, are you telling us that all human ships possess this capability? Our civilian vessels? Yes. Our exploration ships? Certainly. Our research stations? Of course. Elena paused, her expression growing cold. Our military vessels? Well, those are somewhat more advanced.
The hologram shifted again, and, suddenly, the amphitheater was looking at schematics that made no sense at all. The displayed ship seemed to exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously, its weapon systems incorporating principles that most species hadn't even discovered yet.
This is what Admiral Vextar encountered in the Kepler system. This is what we call a patrol craft.
It's one of our smaller military vessels.
The silence in the amphitheater was absolute. Smaller?
Vextar's voice was barely a whisper.
Elena nodded.
Our actual warships are considerably more capable. She gestured again, and the hologram shifted to show a star chart centered on human space.
What the assembled counselors saw defied every assumption they had ever made about humanity's place in the galaxy.
Human colonies weren't limited to the 17 worlds that appeared in official galactic records.
The chart showed thousands of settlements spread across hundreds of star systems.
Many were in regions that the galactic community considered uninhabitable or unreachable. Counselors, humanity has been exploring the galaxy for 2 centuries while most of you believed we were confined to a handful of border worlds.
We've mapped stellar phenomena that you consider mythical. We've established research stations in regions you believe are empty space. We've been watching and learning and growing stronger while you debated whether we were worth your attention. Counselor Nixera coiled tighter in apparent distress. How many ships do you have?
Elena smiled, and there was something in that expression that reminded every observer uncomfortably of Captain Kane's cold confidence.
How many do we need, Counselor?
The question hung in the air like a challenge.
But why? Counselor Zelneth's crystalline form chimed with confusion.
Why hide your true capabilities?
Why present yourselves as weak when you clearly possess technology that surpasses our own? Elena's expression softened slightly. Because, honored counselor, we genuinely prefer peace. We would rather grow food than fight wars. We would rather study the universe than conquer it. We would rather trade knowledge than exchange weapons fire.
She gestured toward Admiral Vextar. But, when someone threatens our civilians, when someone attacks our research stations and puts our people in danger, we respond accordingly.
What happens now? Counselor Thane asked. How does this change the balance of power in the galaxy? Elena considered the question carefully.
That depends, Counselor.
How peaceful do you want the galaxy to be?
She turned to address the entire assembly.
Humanity has spent 2 centuries building a civilization based on exploration, research, and growth. We've developed technologies that most of you consider impossible because we've had to survive in environments that would kill conventional life.
We've learned to thrive in the spaces between your empires because that's where we found room to grow. The hologram shifted one final time, showing not star charts or ship schematics, but something that made every counselor in the amphitheater step back in awe. It was an image of human space, not the 17 colony worlds that appeared in galactic records, but the true extent of human civilization. Thousands of worlds. Millions of ships. Installations in deep space that defied conventional understanding of engineering. Cities built inside dying stars. Research stations anchored to black holes. A civilization that had learned to call the most hostile regions of the galaxy home. This is what humanity has built while you weren't watching, Elena said quietly. This is what we protect when someone threatens our people. Admiral Vextar stared at the display, his warrior's mind struggling to process the implications. How long have you been this powerful? We've been growing stronger every year, Admiral. But, if you're asking when we became a threat to aggressive empires, well, that would be the moment someone decided to attack our civilians. Elena turned back to the assembly. The Zephyrian Empire has been expanding for 3 millennia, consuming worlds and enslaving species. Other empires have followed similar patterns. You've all grown accustomed to taking what you want from those you perceive as weaker. Her voice grew harder. Humanity is here to inform you that this pattern has reached its conclusion. There will be no more unprovoked attacks on civilian populations. There will be no more invasions of peaceful worlds. There will be no more empires built on the suffering of others. And if we refuse? Counselor Nixera hissed. Elena smiled again, and, in that moment, every representative in the amphitheater understood why 12 human ships had been enough to neutralize the Zephyrian Empire's most powerful fleet. Then, you'll discover what our actual warships are capable of.
The emergency session ended in absolute silence.
As the various representatives filed out of the amphitheater, each carrying the knowledge that everything they had believed about galactic power structures had just been proven wrong, a single thought echoed through every mind present: the galaxy had just become a much more peaceful place.
Whether it wanted to or not.
3 months later, Dr. Sarah Chen was back in her laboratory aboard the research station Mendel's Garden, examining soil samples from Kepler 442b. The proximity alarms had been silent ever since the Zephyrian incident, and her work on drought-resistant wheat variants was proceeding ahead of schedule. Through the laboratory window, she could see the agricultural world below green and growing, exactly as it should be. Sometimes, late at night when the shift rotation left the station quiet, she would look up at the stars and wonder what else was out there that she didn't know about her own species. But, mostly, she was content to grow things.
To nurture life from barren soil.
To help feed a galaxy that was finally learning the difference between strength and violence.
In the end, she reflected, that might be the most human thing of all.